Should we see a record light on ours or no?
It will come eventually.
Yes.
Cool. Welcome everybody to the Identifying Security Threats working group meeting. We've got a couple fun things to talk to today, but also we'll leave time for open discussion. I will share my screen. Everybody should be seeing the notes now. So we've got a couple updates from last time. So last time I went away and realized I needed to. Yes, I'll link to this.
I didn't necessarily mean you, the person who was presenting, but
sure. It should be in the meeting invite as well, but again, who knows? Anyway, let me just jump into the demo. So I basically rebuilt the dashboard, new infrastructure. I basically burned the old thing down and redid it, but we redid it better. So here's what we have. It's a new URL. Here's where we start. So what we had before was this kind of hodgepodge of don't even do this to me now. I'm just gonna wait for you. Okay, so this is a Django front end, just so Nginx Django, Grafana, Postgres. This is that initial landing page so this would be metrics.openssf.org or whatever you want the front URL to be. And you can search for a project, so search for Django and you see the projects. If you click on a link here, you go to, I know the color scheme is awful. It's like intentionally awful, so someone who is better at this says, like, please let me fix your color scheme. This is obviously not my superpower. But so any of these will go to Grafana, and any of these links will go to the API. So the API, because everything is now just a plain simple like Django front and Postgres back, it makes things a lot easier. So the API doesn't work because I don't know the difference between underscores and dashes.
Totally sympathetic.
Yeah, it's like the worst. So everything is based off of you providing a package URL. We could do a searchy thing too, but you start with a package URL, and basically it's just a giant list of metrics. The metric keys are like kind of these well-defined things that are per data source. So OpenSSF is, it's an open, criticality is an OpenSSF project. And then anything within raw is like whatever the data source gives me, I'll JSONify it and put the data in. So for this one in particular, there's really just those. We do calculate a couple metrics when we load, which is mostly like URLs, like URLs to additional data. But that's not really that fun. So let's go to, I don't know, Django social auth. So, yeah.
So you click on the name to get the pretty graphic and API to get the raw data.
Yeah, and we can, I just need a placeholder for it. We can put it wherever. So this is OpenSSF criticality, the project criticality, like data dump. I suck in that. I suck in the best practice stuff as I did before, and the OpenSSF scorecard. This is a terrible example. you don't need to start at that front page. You can just be here and just type Kubernetes. This one has good data. Wow, this has stuff for just about everything. Yeah, so criticality, so all the data comes in. You're looking at this and you're like, wait, why is this one blue and this one is red? It shouldn't be. They should all be the same. But yeah, like check mark is good, X is bad, things like that. Scorecard overview. I removed the GitHub specific. I just haven't ported it over yet, so we can decide what we want to do with that. These are all live links, so if you want to see, what I was thinking is, if we wanted to include other sites that could just like tell me about Kubernetes, you could do that. And then isitmaintained.com thinks that it is, provides some additional stuff. So that's fun. The nice thing about this is because I'm loading these existing giant data dumps, so I have 106,000 projects in here right now. The bulk of the data is criticality, but there's a good number of other ones too, and we can just iterate on that. Data is reloaded every day. It takes a couple hours to reload everything, but not a big deal. It's drawing out the metrics, which is why it's unhappy. I can just go back. Forget. Not all projects are GitHub, although most of them are. So like iter server also has the security reviews. So clicking on this should take me right to the review content. And this project overview still needs a little bit of work. But that's what I got so far.
Very nice, Michael.
Awesome. So, it's obviously, work in progress, but we had talked about maybe even putting this on metrics, OpenSSF.org. I sent a query about that, and it somehow mutated into the, how does this all get paid, which I thought was a separate question. But
yes, sorry.
They're not unrelated. But it seems to me that we can start by just, instead of the mystery URL that you've got, slip it on the metrics OpenSSF.org. I don't know formally either the working group chair decides, hi Michael, or the TAC decides. I'm guessing is.
I didn't hear any naysayers from the TAC.
No, I didn't either.
I think we gave TAC the opportunity to voice an objection. Let's just do it, and we'll beg forgiveness if somebody.
Okay. All right. So in that case, I have a beg from you, Michael, which is, tell me what you want the DNS records to say for, and I will. I have discovered apparently one of my superpowers is I can file JIRA tickets,
Nice.
and there's a JIRA ticket for creating DNS entries.
That's terrific. Okay, so I need help from folks on the line because I meant to look this up or refresh. So right now, this is the URL, and ignore the broken cert. If I want metrics.openssf.org, when someone types metrics.openssf.org to get to here, and I don't want to do a redirect, like I want it to look like that. Do I need a C name or do I need an A name? Or is it a C name to OpenSSF-metric db dot blah 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 blah, or is it an a name to the IP address of this, and are those both equivalent?
A CNAME kind of as a canonical name. Let me just kind of think this through, because I'm not, a CNAME creates a canonical name, and it will let you immediately redirect to that.
Because I'm pretty sure the value of a CNAME record is another DNS name. It's not an IP address.
CNAME records, CNAME records can point to other DNS records, such that then the DNS record does another lookup to get the IP address. An A record, I think, can only be an IP address, but I don't know.
Yes, okay. And CNAMEs can only be names. They cannot be IP addresses. That much I do know.
So if the IP address were to
It's been a while. I used to know all this.
Yeah, okay. So I want a CNAME. So for now, that looks as production as it's going to get. So I'll just type it here.
You need to, if you have credentials on this thing, to log in, if you use a CNAME and the cookie is bound to that specific DNS name for the Microsoft.com address.
Good point.
You are going to need to redefine what those are bound to, and you should make sure you limit the scope and yada, 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 yada.
But do you need to log in for this? It seems like it's a get only service. Am I right?
Sorry, no. You will need to log in to modify the dashboard. There is a log. So
okay, all right. So there is a login. All right.
Yeah, and Django will probably drop a cookie anyway, just so you get a session thing on the back end. We can fix both of those, but that's a good point.
It's reading the host header. Ooh, sounds like security things you could play with there.
Yes. As I document in my class.
So remember.
Yeah, beware of just arbitrarily trusting what the client sends you. If that's the host name.
Yep.
But basically,
it would. I mean, it's if Django or Grafana, I think in both. No, in Grafana you define the host name. In Django you can say these are the allowed hosts. So it's the list. If I don't add it to the list, you get an error page.
Yep. Good.
Yeah. Yep. And obviously this cert will need to.
Yeah, we may need to do some. I suspect we're going to need multiple passes on the DNS in order to make HTTPS happy, because I'm guessing we're probably going to use Let's Encrypt. But we can. I think step one is David will help with this in the sense that you tell me what DNS records you want, I will request them.
Okay.
If it turns out they don't work, then I will send more requests.
Right.
Okay. So don't obviously try to make it right, but my experience is the first time it'll be wrong and it will be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think.
Okay, and its value is going to be to that thing. Okay.
Yeah, I think
already.
I think that'll work.
All right. You know what? There's a way to find out.
Yep. Actually, wait, hold on. Since I'm getting the I can just do. I should just be able to use Let's Encrypt here since I own the endpoint, and that's the validation.
Yeah, and you may have to do some changes on the software itself because you haven't used it that way before, but that's okay too.
Yep. Cool. Okay, nice. I think that was the main demo that I had. There is a local caching layer. We can move that over and use more sophisticated caching as needed.
Yeah, I think the key right now is just thinking about caching as you develop. But in fact, that's a mistake I made. The CI best practices badge, had I known what I know now, I would have made it so that logged in pages were almost exactly identical from not logged in pages. Because every time you make a difference, suddenly you can't cache that just whole cloth.
Yep.
So if you can make the pages as hey, if you want to click in something and then that other page is special when you're logged in, then life is simpler.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So Grafana does cache itself, but it is its cache, and I don't know how I would tie that up to an to like a really external one.
Yeah.
We'll optimize where there are hotspots.
Yeah, I don't know right now if how much it's worth doing. Certainly, I think most sites actually have tiered caches, so it's quite what you're doing is quite normal. But just as my experience has been, the more you can make things identical, so that the whole thing can be cached out to a CDN, they just so much easier it is to scale out to crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And we can also scale the box itself. So right now, because it's all Docker Compose, it all is runnable from a local, the local dev setup is infinitely easier than it was before. So it's really like change 2 configuration files and run Docker Compose and you're up. So
now one thing I noticed is that when you started typing, it was starting to show all the results. Does that mean it's actually sending all the list of all possible packages out to the user, or is that some sort of communication back and forth?
That's a good question.
Because I mean, right now that's perfectly fine. That will not scale well.
No, so see here. So it starts out there, and then it goes down to like ABH. So it doesn't seem so. It's probably capped at whatever is that, 300, 500, something like that. If I start typing here, then I don't know. Then it's probably the 300 that match that. So it's not gonna kill the client by giving 100,000 rows. This guy here does paging, so if I just do that, yeah, it should.
Just out of curiosity, do we have any insights into what the current traffic on these sites are? Like not this app, but like in general, what the traffic tends to be on the sites. Because plan for what your traffic you're actually getting, but slight future, but don't plan stupidly into the future because you may never get it and you'll be spending money for it.
I mean, I would be surprised if it's a heavily trafficked site, unless like a package manager decides to link like their per project pages to this, which would be interesting. And if that happens, we can.
Yeah, I think we want it to be trafficked, obviously, but here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that we want people to consult this every time they're thinking about adding a package to their larger system or thinking about deploying it within their environment. So, how often does that happen? Well, I mean, an individual probably only makes that decision at most once a day or a week. But, if you do that 1 million people once a day, once a week, that's a non-trivial number of people. But
yep. I mean, it may also be interesting to kind of do this kind of like way past where we are now, but some sort of an alerting thing where I can watch a project, and as the metrics deviate over time, I get notified. because that's probably more what I want is like, I'm using Django today. If Django becomes abandoned in a month, like I'd like to find out at some point.
Oh, by the way, just a quick comment. We are agreed on metrics plural, not a single metric, since presumably this it has multiple metrics.
Yes. Oh, are you saying that this should?
No, I just want to confirm. It's metrics.openssf.org. I
Yes.
want to make sure that when I do this, I actually provide the correct data. I mean,
Yes. Yeah. So metrics.openssf.org. Yeah.
Right. Can I snag the topic of the conversation and deviate from this in about 2 minutes?
Let's do it. I think we're just kind of.
All right. Yeah. So I got a couple of topics to discuss that I think this working group could potentially own. So this is like identifying security threats for the ecosystem, right? So one of the things that I, as a person working for Gradle and like being, I'm not representing Gradle, but I'm here thinking it from the perspective of Gradle, right? There doesn't seem to be a great intel feed on like threat actors existing in the supply chain. There's no real information about potential places where there are risks that exist in the supply, like who's actively going after the supply chain, or like there's I get my own feed of news, but like both a discussion / like here are threats that you need to be aware of that are like active players, either like identifying kind of groups of people that are playing in this space. I mean, one of the examples of the things that came up, I mean, this was very cheesy, right? But there was the PHP incident, right? From I think within the past 2 weeks. But there was also like the dependency confusion stuff that's been going on. Other threat actors that may be like, publishing malicious packages into, I mean, I was talking to Adam Baldwin a few months ago, and he's like, yeah, the North Koreans just keep loving to throw crypto miners into NPM packages because that's, so kind of more awareness of like who's doing what, and then also potentially getting more of the packaging ecosystem maintainers into the conversation. Trying to like reach out to create I don't know if it's like part of this working group, but like creating a working group of like, discussing between Gradle and Maven and like Sonatype, because we're all separate entities, between, NPM and the people that do Yarn, right? Because I don't know if NPM and Yarn are the node packaging ecosystem in Yarn are coupled together. Other like valuable places where the registry owners and the people making the packaging ecosystems may be different. I mean, Java, right? We have Gradle, Maven, we have SBT, and then there's also like Buck, Bazel, right? Like those groups. So pulling in kind of like and then there's JCenter and JFrog, right? Pulling players together. I mean, maybe starting at the level of like all of the packaging ecosystems discussing together, and then maybe if it gets too big, breaking it out into individual ecosystems as that becomes relevant. But I think that like being aware of security threats, discussing security threats, that kind of space sounds like the domain of the OpenSSF as like a framework to throw it into, because I was thinking about doing that myself with Gradle, but I couldn't get enough political will, and I don't really have the energy right now. But yeah, do these kind of things speak to the people that are interacting with this group?
Yes.
It certainly speaks to me. I mean, at least in some of the communities that I'm familiar with, we would call that a threat briefing.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are organizations which are specifically, if you pay them pounds of money, they will focus and give you a focused threat briefing on your specific, focus area. But yeah. I think that it wouldn't be that bad to combine and say, hey, this is what we're seeing the last few years based on publicly available information. I'll point to, for example, the Backstabber's Knife Collection has some nice data, and Sonatype and some others also have some general open source software. Here's what's going on in the threat world.
Mm-hmm.
So an open source software threat briefing is what I would call that.
Yeah.
So I think that's great on the consumption side. I think, Jonathan, are you thinking more like 15 minutes after the PHP thing was, let's say made public, like, was there anyone in OpenSSF kind of having that dialogue on like, well, has this fit into the larger picture? Is this interesting, or is it just kind of a vulnerability of the day kind of thing?
I mean, there's also the topic that may be at play around the PHP one was clearly like, cheesy, right? Like that was, probably not a sophisticated actor, but other cases where the OpenSSF, like there's an open source supply chain breach, right? And the OpenSSF hears the news about it and says, hey, like we have an incident response firm that has been lined up for open source security incidents like this. We can deploy them to make sure they didn't get anywhere else in your infrastructure, right? Like we've already paid them. Here's a resource that is available for you to utilize to determine how compromised you are. That would also be a real value add.
That is super interesting. Funding with like real dollars is still kind of a work in progress. As soon as that happens, though, having folks on call to be able to like go in and help fix vulnerabilities as well as do IR and everything else, I think that's all interesting and worthy of kind of deep discussion on what OpenSSF's play is. I also like the idea, and maybe it's as simple as having a more dedicated, even if it's just a Slack channel to kind of news of the week things, so that it's just a place where people can like say, hey, did everybody hear about X, and be like, oh, that's interesting, and just kind of start that discussion kind of organically. Because right now, like a lot of it goes into general, but I'm also sure that not everybody on this call uses Slack. So if you don't, you're welcome to join the OpenSSF Slack channel. I mean, we could take it a step further and think about, should OpenSSF be regularly blogging about the PHP and dependency confusion kind of incidents, as they occur, and have a position and or at least give insight into what it's all about and what we're seeing. At the same time, I don't know that OpenSSF can really compete with the firms that have staff that are paid specifically to put together this kind of intel.
Yeah, so I think that I think that offering the resources is more valuable than being the, like offering the resources and the structure, like for an intel feed, for a discussion, a place for discussion for the packaging ecosystem. There's more value there than needing to, like, as an organization, have an active stance yet, right? Like, I mean, maybe later, but like for right now, I think that the easier / earlier, more important statement is just creating the space for that, and then also creating the resources. I think, I think, some of the incidences that have occurred in the past, right, around ESLint and like things like that, right, there's a potential for, incident response, like, you have incident response for the companies that are impacted by those things, but there's no incident response for the open source maintainers. I think that making sure that those capabilities and those resources are available would be like, the connections, the contacts, the like, we can get you the help you need sort of things, and then also the discussions of the active things that are going on as the news is breaking, to make sure that everybody's aware of the risks that exist.
Yeah, if you want, what I had listed earlier was a very generic, hey, these are the kinds of, typo squatting. Well, I think one of the interesting things that you get from the Backstabbers knife collection paper is that typo squatting is a big thing. If you're developed code, but you're not really familiar with how attackers work, you might not be aware of the prevalence of typo squatting. And that's something you don't need a lot of funding or insight. You can just collect public information. But you're right, going in a lot deeper requires real funding.
Yeah.
So, or requires organization. I mean, I'm sure that some of the organizations that are part of OpenSSF have very capable, threat intel orgs, and perhaps some sort of sharing in some way would be appropriate. Where it would seem silly for a member organization to pay money for someone outside their organization to do the same work and come to the same conclusion that they've already done.
Yeah. But, I think there's another important bit of knowledge to know about this. I think that of all of the packaging ecosystems, I think that NPM, being owned by GitHub, probably has the biggest security team. Maybe the Microsoft for NuGet, but Java, the Gradle, I don't know what Sonatype. Every time I email security at Sonatype, I keep getting their CISO, or so I don't think that they have a huge security response team. I think that the Ruby people, I think that's one person.
Right.
Python, I think it's one person, right? So a lot of these packaging ecosystem maintainers, which are driving the entire industry supply chain, are protected by one person, right? That's and so giving them more resources, more contacts, more we had something that happened at Gradle where we got a crypto miner dropped on one of our machines, and I was operating solo pretty much, and I just said, "Hey, Adam Baldwin, who is the VP of the vice president of security at NPM," and I'm like, "I'm way out of my league here." And he jumped on a video call and just helped me out with that incident. I had that because I had the connections and contacts. But had I been not known Adam, I would have been, kind of alone and not known what the hell I was doing.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I think these two are separate. I think we can approach them separately, since so back when we did the Package Manager Summit, we at least had some connections to each of the major ecosystems, I guess. Mm-hmm. I know there has been some turnover. I know Adam is no longer with NPM, mm-hmm. but I think either having those organizations be part of OpenSSF, or at least building out that contact list, so all the security people at each of the ecosystems know all of the other security people of the other ecosystems, and then it's just we'll just kind of take it from there. And I don't know that we need a ton of structure there, but that seems like that would solve at least some things. Yeah. Okay. So let's do that. So action 1 is going to be it's I know the folks at GitHub, as they set that up, probably still have those connections. I obviously we have the DL that invite went to. I'll try to make some progress on this and see if I thought that Kay had approached the package managers around OpenSSF, but I'll double check.
Can you make sure that you reach out to Gradle formally? Because I only have I'm just I can do my push once I have a request, but I can't pivot directly in. If we get something directly from externally and then coming internally, I can take the email and talk to my manager about it, but I can't do it. I know it's my idea, but I can't even push it myself. So that would help.
Yep, and I guess part of it is if it's going to be a formal thing, then it would need kind of formal approval by each org. if it's just like connecting you to the new Atom at NPM.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I think that just a presence, right? And like, we'll bi-weekly, once a month sort of meetings of like, we're all coming together discussing things. There would be a lot of value in there. Like just understanding, like Sonatype's got a bunch of blog posts that they post about, but like, I don't have enough time to read all of them. I get whatever, as much security news as I can shoved into my head, right? But like, those meetings would be really valuable, like, brain dumps from them because they have a lot of people writing posts, stuff like that, and like other people that are involved in that space, that there would be a lot of value in that mind share.
Yep. Makes sense. And then we'll see about just creating a Slack channel for like open discussion on vulnerabilities of the week. If you think, I mean,
well, and I think there's a third one also, which is what I thought you originally had in mind, which was some sort of generic, okay, you don't have several $1 million for to hire somebody to do a threat briefing. What's the overall status on the threats on open source software? Mm-hmm. And basically, if nothing else, maybe just pointing off to a list of some of the papers on the topic. Mm-hmm. I listed 3. I mean, you've got Backstabber's Knife Collection, Sonatype, Synopsis. I'm sure there's more, but make a little, I guess, a short brief and links to more or something like that. Mm-hmm. I'd say I'll add it with a brief summary and links to relevant papers. There we go.
Yep.
By the way, Michael, I'm trying to pat my head and rub my tummy at the same time. We got your CNAME already set up.
Really?
Yeah. Here's the downside. It'll work for HTTP, but not for HTTPS.
Oh, because the cert's not bound to the.
Yeah, that's right. The cert's not good anyway. Oh, and this is the error because it's not in the allowed host. Sweet.
Yep.
That's awesome. So I'll fix that today.
Yeah. So we need to and you may be able to just do a quick config, but if that doesn't work, we can. We will just need to drill further.
Nope. I'm sure that it will just work.
Is there value in adding a dedicated Slack channel to packaging ecosystem threats as they like, or is that not yet necessarily?
Well,
I mean, we could, but I wouldn't.
There.
Don't start there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say that I don't know who, I guess the question is who's monitoring. I'm already overwhelmed. I do my best to ignore Slack and work off email because otherwise there is no time in the day to actually get any work done. If I get interrupted every 2 seconds, I try to batch things. And I don't know how many other people like that, but certainly for me, if I don't batch it, I can't get things done.
I mean, we could think about this a little bit harder. Like, do we just want OpenSSF members to contribute, or do we want this to be more of a quasi-public forum where, I mean, maybe we should just start small and just have it be. We could do Slack or a mailing list. I mean, we could just have the OpenSSF mailing list. Although for me, I batch up the mailing list stuff, so we could do that. We could table it and think about it more, make a decision next time too.
Yeah, it's not a crazy idea, but I think the idea of where do I go to get help is a reasonable idea. We need to make sure that if we say that there's somebody on the other end,
I'm just thinking about the Cloudflare, like if you go to cloudflare.com, they have an under attack button with a question mark, and like you click that button if you're like getting DDoSed, like getting So like, it sounds like we want something similar, like, yeah, right. Basically, yeah.
Actually, it's not a bad idea.
Okay, that's different than what we were originally talking about. I think both make sense. hey, here's some information before, to help you understand the situation. And then, oh my gosh, I'm under attack. Here's the button.
Yeah.
So can anybody sign up for, there's no like.
For the Slack channel? No, anybody can join. Anybody can join the working group.
So if we had a page, so just imagine this. So okay, we're going to design on the fly. Page on OpenSSF.org, basic info, link to join Slack channel, which is like the help me. And it's basically kind of a open forum, like, you have a problem, we'll try to help. And if we get overwhelmed or spammed or whatever, we can deal with it then. But like, I don't know. I mean, the problem is marketing. Like, how do we get people to know about this thing? But,
I'm a little afraid to market this one. There's two dangers. Nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but at the same time, I think if more people knew about it, more people would be fielding questions. So maybe, we'll never know unless we try it. I think these are all interesting ideas.
Well, and indeed, there are other organizations we might be able to coordinate with, like the CERT-CC.
Mm-hmm. Do they do this kind of thing? Like, if I went to CERT and I said, "Hey, somebody said that my thing has a SQL injection. I don't understand what that means. Can you help?" Like,
they tend to do more of the coordination of getting the word out, assuming that the supplier is going to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anyone's asked them that question, to be honest. I mean, we could ask our folks and just see what they thought about that. I suspect they'd be a little afraid of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
They're already overwhelmed as it is, so that doesn't make it a bad idea. It's just, I don't know if anybody's even come to them with the question.
Let's come to them with the question. I mean, it doesn't, CERT doesn't, to me, just doesn't feel like the right organization for this.
Right.
But
I'm trying to think of who would you do that with now?
I mean, nobody. That's why they were security consulting firms. If you could get this for free, you wouldn't need a lot of these orgs.
Yeah, and to be fair, I think a lot of projects, if you reported a serious problem, I mean, patches welcome. Otherwise, they'll fix it, and they'll fix it themselves in many cases. The bigger problem is when there's nobody home. But I don't know how often it hits where I see a problem, but I have no idea how to fix it. I mean, that must happen, but
I mean, perhaps the time, like, perhaps something that took a month to roll out could have been done in 15 minutes had the person had the resource to just say, "Oh no, just flip the bit from 0 to 1," and then at the same time, though, like, if it's real work, then it's something that we should be staffing and paying people to do.
Or get an organization to join, like an IR team to join, and instead of them offering money, they offer billable hours.
Totally. That's a good idea too.
I have a question on this one. If you get it for free, would anybody trust our source?
they got it for free, would they? Well, these are open source projects, so they are not going to be able to pay for it anyway. Most likely. So their choice is free or nothing from their perspective. The fact that we're paying the bill for it in hours or dollars. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
even if they are open source projects, when a corporation tries to accommodate it to their own supply chain, they would have some people dedicatedly analyzing the code, trying to do the fixes in terms of security. I hope that is the most usual practice, but if we are going to give it free, that this kind of information, would anybody be trusting on that and acting upon it? That is a big question for me.
I don't know. I would be genuinely surprised if some, all, like, I don't think that many organizations do security due diligence on open source when they use it. I think the most that the vast majority of organizations will do is a CVE check. Mm-hmm. Which means that anything else that we provide on top of that is goodness. But I think what we're talking about in this particular case is, you know, a horrible vulnerability is found in this super critical open source project that is maintained by one person and is feeling overwhelmed at the moment in the pressure to get a fix out. And it's, you know, it's been 3 years since I touched this code and I don't remember how this works. And, you know, for whatever reason they have, it's knowing that they have someone that they can turn to for help. I think what is important, I as I'm thinking about this more, I'm not sure that this is the kind of thing that we should contemplate doing until we have folks that are like signed up to do this for reals.
But a tool like this could promote more organizations to join initiatives like OpenSSF and, you know, and as a result, fund things like this at a higher level. Yeah. So maybe not the end user is paying for it, but, you know, if it garners more awareness and more organizations to join OpenSSF and contribute, then, you know, then more tools like this could be, you know, incentivized or developed.
Yeah. Okay. So how about this? We have about 4 minutes left. So number one is easy. I think number two is easy too. Number three is easy. This fourth one is hard. Would someone like to take point in kind of thinking about this more and coming up with kind of a recommendation on how we might want to do this?
I think that's a conversation with. So I think that part of that conversation involves TAC, right? And saying, right, because you need to be like, you know, I think that anybody that actually wants to execute on any of these things, like OSSF, to like talk to. Can you still hear me? Did I drop out?
Yep. You dropped for a second, but we can hear you.
All right. Somebody needs to reach out, like saying, like, you know, or talking to contacts at fill in the blank IR firm, right? Or fill in the blank, whatever, and say like, hey, like, you know, would your corporation be willing to contribute hours to the OSSF, like, as like, you know, if we said like, hey, this incident arose, but like, you know, the TAC is kind of, how does that get managed? Is that like, does the company say, yeah, we'll give you 100 hours and like that just stands, or does that need to get recorded as like a thing on a, because that's like, I guess that they want to get a tax write-off for that, right? They're going to want to get a tax write-off for those 100 hours or whatever. Yeah.
I think, sorry, I guess what I'm looking for is someone to kind of own this problem from our working group's perspective and basically come up with a high-level proposal, talk to TAC, and figure out if this thing has legs.
I would if I was in a better mental state, but I'm dealing with depression and my own mental stuff. So yes, I would, but I can't.
That's fine. How about this? We can table this, so everybody can go back and think about this, and we can talk in 2 weeks at the next meeting, and if maybe we'll have some different thoughts and all that. So cool, awesome. Thank you all very much for your thoughts and participation and everything else. I'll see you guys again in about 2 weeks, and hopefully by then the website will be up, and then we can get moving on the on a kind of announcement and all that. So thanks everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael.
Have a good one.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. If I may jump in, I would say, oops. Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?